Imagine this for a moment. An entire community of 115 people, men, women, and even small children, suddenly vanished without leaving behind a single trace. No bodies were ever found. No signs of conflict or struggle were discovered. The homes were abandoned, the settlement eerily silent, and the only clue left behind was a single carved word on a wooden post. What truly happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? For more than 4 centuries, historians, archaeologists, and curious minds have been haunted by this mystery. Was it famine? Was it war? Or did something far more sinister occur on that lonely island? Stay with us, because tonight we are going to dive deep into one of America's oldest and most chilling unsolved mysteries, the story of the colony that simply disappeared. To truly understand the mystery of Roanoke, we must step back into the late 1500s, a time when England was racing to expand its power across the globe. The New World, as it was called then, was filled with promise, danger, and endless possibilities. Queen Elizabeth I granted one of her most trusted men, Sir Walter Raleigh, the right to establish colonies across the Atlantic. His dream was clear: to create England's very first permanent settlement in America. In 1587, Raleigh sent a group of 115 settlers across the treacherous ocean. These were not just soldiers or adventurers. Among them were women, children, and entire families who hoped to build new lives in this uncharted land. The journey was long and brutal, but eventually, they reached the shores of Roanoke Island, off the coast of what we now know as North Carolina. Imagine the sight: rough wooden houses being built, smoke from fires rising into the sky, and settlers trying to grow crops in unfamiliar soil. This was more than just survival. This was history being written, the foundation of what could have been the first English foothold in the New World. Among these settlers was Virginia Dare, the first English child born in America, a symbol of hope for the colony's future. But life in Roanoke was anything but simple. The settlers faced food shortages, tensions with local Native American tribes, and the constant threat of disease. Every day was a struggle between hope and despair. Still, despite these hardships, the colony represented something far greater than themselves: the beginning of England's dream of building an empire across the ocean. And yet, within just 3 short years, this dream would collapse into silence. The entire colony would vanish, leaving behind only a single, cryptic clue carved into wood, a clue that has puzzled the world for more than 400 years. Stay with us, because the deeper we go, the stranger this story becomes. Life in the Roanoke colony was far from the dream that many settlers had imagined. From the very beginning, survival was a daily battle. The soil was difficult for farming, and crops failed to produce enough food. Supplies that had been brought across the ocean quickly ran low, leaving the settlers desperate and vulnerable. Hunger became an ever-present shadow over the small community. The weather, too, proved unforgiving. Harsh storms battered their fragile homes, and sweltering summers made it nearly impossible to grow enough to feed everyone. Winter, with its bitter cold and scarce resources, was even more brutal. Each passing season tested the endurance of the colonists, chipping away at their hopes of building a lasting future in this new land. Tensions with local Native American tribes added yet another layer of struggle. Some tribes offered cautious trade, but others viewed the English with suspicion and hostility. Misunderstandings, broken trust, and clashes over scarce resources turned fragile relationships into open conflicts. For the settlers, danger seemed to lurk beyond every tree line. Amid these hardships, Governor John White, the leader of the colony, knew that survival would be impossible without new supplies. Reluctantly, he made the difficult decision to sail back to England, leaving behind his family, including his newborn granddaughter, Virginia Dare, with the promise that he would return quickly. But fate had other plans. When White reached England, he found his homeland consumed by war with Spain. Every available ship was seized for battle against the Spanish Armada. His desperate pleas to send aid were ignored. Days turned into months, and months into years. And when John White finally returned to Roanoke, it was already too late. When John White finally returned to Roanoke in August of 1590, he was filled with anticipation. 3 long years had passed since he had last seen his family and the settlers he had sworn to protect. He imagined the joy of reunion, the sound of children playing, and the site of a thriving colony. But what he found instead was a silence so deep, it was almost unbearable. The settlement was completely deserted. The houses that once stood full of life were dismantled. The defensive fort, once meant to protect the colonists, was abandoned. There were no signs of violence, no weapons left scattered on the ground, no burned remains, and no bodies to explain their fate. It was as though every man, woman, and child had simply vanished into thin air. White's heart must have sunk as he searched frantically for answers. Then, his eyes caught something unusual, a single word carved into a wooden post. It read, CROATOAN. On a nearby tree, the letters CRO were also etched. This was the only clue left behind by the settlers, the only trace of where they might have gone. White immediately thought of CROATOAN Island, known today as Hatteras Island, home to the CROATOAN tribe who had sometimes shown friendship to the English. Was this carving a message? Had the colonists relocated peacefully to live with the tribe? Or was it a desperate clue left behind before something far more sinister happened? One detail haunted him deeply. There was no cross carved above the word. White had instructed the colonists to leave a cross as a sign if they were in danger. The absence of that mark suggested they had moved willingly. But the mystery remained unsolved. And so, the question echoed in White's mind, as it still echoes today. What really happened to the Lost Colony of Roanoke? The word CROATOAN, carved into the post, may have been the single greatest clue, but it has raised far more questions than it has answered. For centuries, historians, archaeologists, and storytellers have tried to uncover what really happened to the Lost Colony. And while no single theory has been universally accepted, 5 powerful explanations stand out, each one offering possibilities, contradictions, and a haunting sense of mystery. Theory 1. Absorption by the CROATOAN tribe. The first and perhaps most hopeful theory is that the colonists did not die at all. Instead, they may have merged with the CROATOAN tribe, a native community living nearby on what is today Hatteras Island. The word CROATOAN could have been a direct message left for White, pointing to their new home. This idea is not without evidence. Years later, some European explorers reported encountering native tribes who displayed features that seemed unusual, lighter skin, gray eyes, and even European-style clothing. Could these have been the descendants of the Roanoke colonists, integrated into a native community? If true, it means the settlers may have survived, though their English identity slowly faded into history. Theory 2. Hostile attack. Another theory is far darker. Some historians suggest that the colonists may have been killed or enslaved by a rival native tribe. Relations between the English and several tribes in the region were tense, and previous encounters had already turned violent. It is possible that one group, seeing the settlers as intruders, struck without warning. But there is one problem with this theory. No signs of a massacre were ever discovered. No bones, no broken weapons, and no evidence of a large conflict were found at the site. If the colonists had truly been attacked and killed, how could every single trace have vanished? That contradiction keeps this theory alive, yet incomplete. Theory 3. A Spanish raid. At the time, Spain was England's greatest enemy. The two nations were locked in fierce battles for dominance on the seas. Some historians suggest that Spanish forces, sailing north from Florida, may have destroyed the Roanoke settlement as a warning to England. At first, this theory seemed possible. The Spanish were known for ruthless raids, and eliminating an English colony would have been a powerful message. But again, no evidence was ever found. No Spanish records, no documentation, and no surviving testimony to confirm such a raid. If the Spanish were responsible, they left behind an unusually clean silence. Theory 4. Starvation and death in the wilderness. Another explanation is simple but heartbreaking. The settlers may have been overwhelmed by hunger, disease, and harsh weather. With supplies running out, they could have decided to abandon the colony and attempt survival inland. But the wilderness was unforgiving. Many may have perished along the way, leaving no permanent trace of their journey. This theory explains why the colony was found empty, with homes dismantled and no evidence of violence. It paints a picture of desperate people, searching for food, shelter, and safety, only to be swallowed by the forests and rivers of the New World. While logical, it also raises the question, why leave behind the word CROATOAN if they had gone elsewhere? Theory 5. The supernatural. And then, of course, comes the most chilling category of explanations, the ones that go beyond reason. Over the centuries, storytellers have linked the disappearance of the Lost Colony to curses, witchcraft, and even supernatural forces. Some claim the area was haunted by dark spirits. Others have gone further, comparing it to Bermuda Triangle, style vanishings, or even suggesting alien abduction. Of course, there is no evidence to support these theories. Yet they remain popular because they touch on something deeper, the human fascination with the unknown. When logic cannot fully solve a mystery, imagination takes its place. And in the case of Roanoke, the silence left behind invites fear, speculation, and endless storytelling. Each of these theories offers a glimpse into what might have happened, yet none provide a final answer. The truth is still buried beneath centuries of mystery. Perhaps the colonists lived on through native tribes, perhaps they perished in the wilderness, or perhaps something far stranger happened, something we may never fully understand. And that is why the story of Roanoke endures. It is not just about a colony that disappeared. It is about a question that still haunts us. How can more than 100 men, women, and children vanish without a single trace? Backend index pointing right. If you found yourself pulled into this mystery, make sure to subscribe and stay with us, because the next part will uncover how modern science and archaeology are still trying to solve the riddle of the Lost Colony. More than 4 centuries after the disappearance, the Lost Colony of Roanoke continues to pull historians, archaeologists, and even genetic researchers into its orbit. Modern investigations have pushed beyond the faded records of the 1500s, searching for physical traces that might explain what happened to those 115 settlers. Archaeological teams have unearthed small but intriguing artifacts, pottery shards, fragments of weapons, and European trade items, discovered not on Roanoke Island itself, but miles inland. These findings suggest that some colonists may have abandoned their original settlement and tried to integrate with local tribes. Yet, the evidence remains scattered, leaving more questions than answers. In recent years, scientists have also turned to DNA. By comparing the genetic markers of modern Native American communities with those of potential European descendants, researchers hope to trace whether the colonists had merged with indigenous groups. However, the results so far remain inconclusive, with no definitive proof that connects the settlers' bloodline to anyone living today. Even with advanced technology, the mystery refuses to yield. Each discovery adds a piece to the puzzle, but the full picture stays hidden. Were the settlers absorbed? Were they destroyed? Or did something else entirely occur? The truth still eludes even the sharpest of minds. And perhaps that is why Roanoke continues to fascinate generation after generation. The silence of the island, the absence of remains, and the single carved word CROATOAN keep the mystery alive. Stay with me, because what comes next will take this mystery to an even deeper level. 115 souls, men, women, and children, vanished without leaving a single trace. Their homes stood empty, their belongings scattered or abandoned, and the only clue, the word CROATOAN, carved into a post, offers more questions than answers. For over 4 centuries, the fate of the Lost Colony of Roanoke has remained one of history's most haunting enigmas. Despite centuries of research, archaeological digs, and even DNA studies, no definitive explanation has emerged. Every discovery seems to deepen the mystery rather than resolve it. Were the settlers absorbed into the CROATOAN tribe, blending into a new life far from their homeland? Or did something far darker and more sinister occur in the wilderness of the New World? The story of Roanoke endures because it challenges our understanding, leaving us to wonder, speculate, and imagine. And now, the question passes to you. What do you believe happened to the Lost Colony? Tell us your theory in the comments, because the mystery of Roanoke is far from over. Your insight might be the key to unlocking a story that has puzzled the world for centuries.